everyone, it's Mete. I'm a founder of FitCheck. We are super here for sustainable fashion, and in today's episode of Checkbot, I'm talking with Phillip, the co-founder of Homebase. Enjoy. So can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, really great to be here. I really appreciate kind of this podcast and highlighting things. My name is Phillip An. I'm the co-founder of this company called Homebase. What we do is we provide a kind of comprehensive solution for home ownership across Southeast Asia, and our main market that we target right now is Vietnam. We've been building this company for the past 3-4 years. Mainly based in Vietnam and in Southeast Asia. And we've expanded from our team of just 2 or 3 people to now over 60-70 employees with multiple product lines around the theme of financial inclusion on home ownership here. In terms of personal background, I'm mainly from the US. So grew up there, worked there professionally, and have worked across a wide range of fields from banking to consulting to startups to venture capital, and moved over to Southeast Asia around 4 years ago for this company as well. So yeah.
So what's Homebase?
Our mission at Homebase is basically to elevate lives across Southeast Asia through a combination of finance and real estate, right? And so, when we started the company, we were really just trying to solve this problem around home ownership across Southeast Asia, right? In this type of market, it's very different. It's very difficult, basically, for a young person to be able to afford a home. You see interest rates as high as 13 or 14% every single year. You see bank deposits as high as maybe 40 or 50% that they have to put in the very beginning, right? So if you're a young person or someone who doesn't have very stable income, it's very hard for you to actually qualify for a bank loan and be able to get access to home ownership. And in Southeast Asia, it's actually an emerging market, right? The home prices are growing faster and faster every single year. So that means that if you don't actually buy a home earlier and you're spending a lot of money on renting, it's harder and harder for you to do so, right? So we were tackling this general problem, and kind of our solution that we came up with is another way for someone to actually be able to access home ownership. How it works is, they would come to us, a customer would come to us with a property that they have in mind. We would buy it, and basically over time they would pay it off on the equity front, and then as kind of they build up to 100% of the equity value of the home. That's kind of our core business of what we started with, and then over time we go along the home ownership journey as well.
Also, you've been the first Vietnamese startup to be accepted into YC. So how do you see that both for a Vietnamese startup ecosystem and for Homebase?
So fundamentally, Vietnam is a very fast growing country. There's a lot of young people. The average age is between 30, 31 years old, and a lot of people go into entrepreneurship and technology and engineering. So there's a very strong tech talent, and I think it's one of those opportunities where maybe Vietnam is where China was maybe 10, 15 years ago, right before the startup ecosystem and entrepreneurship and investment ecosystem really exploded, right? For us, it was really kind of an honor that Y Combinator and a lot of these foreign investors from Silicon Valley are starting to look at Vietnam as an emerging market to invest in. And I think there's a lot of opportunities here as well, right? And that's why you see a lot more startups and a lot more entrepreneurs coming here to start companies to build these solutions as well. For us, I would say YC has always been a dream of ours, right? Because my co-founder and I, we followed YC programs essays from a very early age. And we really followed their advice for building the company. And I think as we see other companies, they've been really helpful as partners, right? Not only on the fundraising front, but also introducing us to people in the startup ecosystem around the world who have built really successful businesses in our space and giving us really valuable advice as well. We're really honored and be part of that ecosystem. And now there's more and more YC companies both in Vietnam and across Southeast Asia. So it's really great to have this tight-knit community that we can go to and talk to these other entrepreneurs on the problems that they're facing, give advice and give advice as well.
So, what inspired the idea behind Homebase? How did you guys come up with it?
I think one of the YC advice that people say is that solve a problem that you face, right? You or your co-founder or whoever else on your team that you're really familiar with. I think it was definitely a attitude of trying to solve a problem that you personally knew or you personally faced, right? So, my co-founder actually had been living in Vietnam for quite a few years before we actually started the company. And for him, he was at the age where he was actually trying to buy a property and get financing. And when he actually explored the market, he realized that there was really no options for him, or even if there were options, they were very, very limited. And he realized that basically he was actually someone who had a very stable income, relatively high paying. But if he faced the issue, maybe a lot of other people did as well. So what we did is we started with a problem that we knew and we kind of already felt the pain point of. And we took that and we actually talked to hundreds of customers across the market, right? Both young people and old people, both very experienced real estate investors and also new home buyers. And the feedback that we received was pretty overwhelming that, this is a major, major pain point and that something needed to be done. And so basically over time, we decided that there was a major kind of problem, right, in the market, a major gap that we could solve. And we were lucky enough that when we actually looked and, kind of reach out to our connections in more established markets, that some companies were also tackling almost the same problem, right? In, United States and the UK and more established markets as well. So over time, after we found the problem and we localized the solution, right? We talked to more users, we iterated the product depending on the local customs. We were able to actually come up with the idea over time. I think YC is definitely a great experience. I would say that maybe there's 2 or 3 major takeaways for us. Number one is just, I think, dream big, right? It's really incredible. I think part of the experience is that you actually get to kind of chat or talk with some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the history of the world. So I think for our first week, our onboarding session, the founders of Airbnb spoke, right? And throughout the entire experience, right, Drew Houston from Dropbox, who is also a YC alum, came in and spoke. And then another week, the founders of Stripe came in and spoke. And so you see a lot of these founders building really, really revolutionary and incredible companies, and they had this really incredible vision, right? In the beginning, it's very difficult as well because, for example, for the founders of Airbnb, really no one believed, even in YC, no one really believed that, you could come in, you could, have a stranger stay in your house, pay for it, and people would be okay with that, right? But in the end, they were actually able to continue building the business, persevere, and build something really incredible and build something very big. So that was really inspiring for us. The second thing I think is this power of community and the cohort experience of YC is just really incredible as well. So, as part of the YC, you'll split into different groups, and every single group, you have different companies of all different sizes, sectors, industries, and, a lot of different entrepreneurs. And every single week, you're working with your group partners who are very experienced entrepreneurs themselves to actually track your metrics to grow, right? Track your growth rate and diagnose some problems. But also you see some of the other startups in your batch, in your cohort, in your group actually making progress as well. So, basically because you're building in public and you're actually seeing where everyone else is going, that kind of progress really pushes you and inspires you as well, right? So, I think that was really cool as well. I think the last thing is just that, YC teaches you a really, really, wide range of really amazing lessons. One of the things that, was really cool, a lesson that they taught is, do things that don't scale. So, in the beginning, for example, for the Airbnb founders, right? Instead of actually hiring photographers to take photos and, make the listings very, very nice, what they did was that they actually themselves went to New York and actually started taking photos of the rooms that were actually on their platform and talking to customers, right? And, for us, that was also really inspiring as well because, if one of the really successful companies, right, like Airbnb could do that, or for example, in Stripe, right, what they did was the founders themselves would actually go to other YC companies and offer to download this code for the payment processing system, direct on their laptop, and the founders would do it, right? It means that, you as a founder, you should be committed enough and you should be kind of dedicated enough to actually do this as well, right? So that was something that I think still inspires us, and it's an attitude that we still follow to this day as well.
So do you have any interesting story in Homebase, like Airbnb with cereals, especially in the early
Yeah,
days?
yeah, of course. I mean, for us, definitely, there were a lot of challenges in the beginning. So for us, when we initially started the company, it was me and my co-founder, and we actually, brought on someone else as well. One of the very, very important things that YC and other, venture capital funds tell you is actually it's really important to find people that you can work with that you can trust, right? Because in the early days, it's actually not, traction or it's not competitors that can kill your company. It's actually because of co-founder conflicts and breakup. So, originally we had 3 people, and basically we were actually raising our first round of funding, which basically was our pre-seed round of funding. And at that point, we were actually, talking to a lot of venture capital funds across Southeast Asia, and we actually managed to collect, some checks, sign some term sheets as well. Things are going very, very well. Um, Unfortunately, one time we were actually pitching an investor. One investor found out that this third guy on our team actually had been convicted as a felon. Like he had committed a financial crime. And several years ago, he actually, had been sent to jail for basically stealing money from a bank. And at that time, we were very, very shocked, right? Because we had met this guy through again another venture capital fund that me and my co-founder were entrepreneur residents of that. And we thought, he's very, very articulate guy, very well spoken. And, we never would expected something like that to happen, right? And even interacting with every day, he seemed like a really, really great guy. So basically after we had to confront him and we had to do more diligence on him and, dig into his history, we actually found that that investor was actually correct about this guy, right? And at that point, because you're still very, very early stage, maybe you're just a team with just this idea of what you want to do in the future. And, at that point, you barely have any traction. If you tell your investors that kind of story, all of them, by right, are actually very scared, right? So they actually, a lot of the investors who actually ended up committing capital ended up pulling out. And we were left basically with me and my co-founder. And, we actually were kind of really sad at that point, right? Because, you basically have nothing, right? Like, and everyone actually already pitched you or they don't really believe in your idea anymore. So through that experience, I think my co-founder and I really had to just, reach out to people that we knew, reach out to people on LinkedIn and actually raise our initial round of funding that way. And through kind of doing that method and actually then operating the business, getting some traction, then ended up overcoming that kind of hurdle, getting to YC, and building the business as a whole and regaining that institutional trust. That's how we were able to persevere. So I think that really taught us the lesson of number one, obviously finding really great people and finding people that you can trust, right? That don't have that kind of background or history. But number two, also the importance of this perseverance, right? For us, after that, obviously COVID was a very difficult challenge for us, right? But I think having gone through those challenges in the very beginning stages, it just made us really strong. And it allowed us to actually persevere through later challenges that we saw maybe other companies would be more affected by, right? And to this day, even I think that was probably the hardest thing that we've done, right? And having enough belief and having enough conviction, especially at that early stage, to still persevere and not give up. That's that was difficult, I would say. Yeah. So hopefully that's a good story for you. Yeah.
So for the bonus question, like what are you listening to or watching to these days?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there were several podcasts I'm a really big fan of. One of my favorite is a podcast by this guy called Naval Ravikant. He's the founder of AngelList, and he has a podcast called How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky. So it's a little bit of a clickbait title, but it actually describes his philosophy on how to build wealth, right? Not only in your professional life, if you're running a company, if you're an entrepreneur, but also, principles for living a good life. So I really subscribe to a lot of the principles that he, talks about. And I think they're very fundamental to how we even make decisions on our company. Because, it's really based on the sense of logic and structured thinking, which I really like, right? In regards to other kind of online content I watch, I think there's a really famous podcast by four Silicon Valley entrepreneurs called the All In Podcast. Which they give weekly updates on, business, government, policy, politics, all of the above, right? And even being in Southeast Asia, I think it helps inform a lot of, kind of these big level things that are happening in other parts of the world, especially in the United States, right? And also keep up to date as well. And then otherwise, been reading a lot of books as well. Recently, been reading a lot on Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, especially these value investing books, because I really like the way that they think about, expected value and making life choices as well. And you notice a lot of them, whether they are applying for business advice, they actually can translate into your personal life. and teach you, basically how to live a really, really good life as well.
What's one habit that improves your productivity in your daily life?
Yeah. Yeah. I think by far for me, the most important thing is exercising. So my personal background is, I've always been into athletics. I did competitive swimming for maybe around 10, 11 years. So growing up, it was always like 2 hours a day of practice. And then as you get older, it's sometimes even 3 or 4 hours a day of practice. So, exercising and being very active has been always part of my routine. And I think, especially now as an entrepreneur, when you have so much going on in your work and your life, I think staying fit and having a healthy body really helps calm your mind as well and help you maintain that composure, right? To balance a lot of the stress of daily life. So, recently my routine has just been waking up, pretty early in the morning, maybe 6 a.m. and, getting my 1 to 2 hours of gym and exercise in. And, it's basically this philosophy also of, they call it boiling the frog, right? Basically, doing the hard thing first in the morning so that everything else in the day, regardless of what challenge you are, you face or you encounter, right? Everything else becomes relatively easy as well. So yeah, definitely, staying active, going to the gym, getting exercise in, whatever it is to stay physically fit.
How do you incorporate sustainability in your daily life?
I think, on the theme of kind of, physical health, right? Because I think beyond anything, right, having a really good physical health is really important to, maintaining your stamina, right, or your endurance as an entrepreneur, because sometimes you're working very, very long hours and you're sacrificing a lot of outer work, right? I think on the sustainability front, it's actually also reflected in what you put into your body, right? Not just exercising, but also what you eat. And, I think recently, especially, been trying to be a little bit more conscious about, eating healthily, right? And I think that theme of sustainability is, eating foods that are more plant-based, right? Or eating salad and those kind of things, right? Even on the protein aspect of things, right? I think you can be very conscious about what kind of meat that you do consume, if you do consume meat, right? And how does that actually affect the environment as well? I think, the basic agricultural industry, right, is one of the biggest contributors to pollution, right, and to waste as well. So I think there's a really, really good effect, right, both on your personal health, but also globally as a, ESG factor, right, if you actually do be mindful of sustainability in that context.
The last question, or what inspires you the most, and a quote that you love.
I think one of the quotes that I really, really like is, I think this one by Sam Altman, who he used to be the president of YC and now he leads OpenAI. And I think the quote that he wrote on his blog was, extreme people get extreme results, right? So I think he was referencing, this theme of, if you really want to be successful, right? As an entrepreneur, as an artist, as a creative, whatever is a career, right? You just can't take the average path, right, to be able to achieve that result. Or you can't put in the average number of hours to be able to achieve that result. Or you can't do the conventional things that everyone else does, right? And I think, it inspires me in a very large extent, because I think for Sam, right, he's a living epitome of the result of that kind of thinking as well, right? So even for us, when we think about building the company, right? Obviously there's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of commitment that you have to do, right? Maybe you have to put in more hours, you have to work on weekends, right? But also other entrepreneurs are doing this. But it also makes you reframe the way that you approach problems, right? In terms of hiring as well, right? You don't necessarily have to stay with the conventions of incentivizing people in the right way, right? Or maybe there's social conventions around how you manage your employees that everyone else does. But if you actually really want to get, results that are very, very extreme, right, that are very abnormal, or if you want to achieve a really large amount of success, you have to be very creative, right, in thinking about how you can achieve those as well. And I think in the same way for myself, right, and for the company, we also are just very ambitious with the vision that we can bring and that we can achieve, and the success that we can bring to the world, and it really elevates society, right? So even in regards to how we think about building products or scale or expanding our company, right, and overall growth, right, we are quite ambitious, and we really hope to actually make a really big impact on society as well.
So that was my last question. Thank you for
Awesome.
being here. Glad to have you on
Yeah.
Checkpods. Yeah, it was a nice chat with you.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Yeah.